Well, the New Zealand designer Zambesi has been forced to admit this afternoon that not all of its collection is made in New Zealand. It comes after the world designer Denise Lestrange-Courbet yesterday conceded some of her collection included t-shirts made in Bangladesh and sweatshirts made in China, despite swing tags stating the clothing was made in New Zealand. Checkpoint visited Zambesi's Ponsonby store today and found a beaded dress with a Zambesi label that was actually made in Calcutta, India. This despite the company's website stating all Zambesi's garments are proudly made in New Zealand. So what constitutes made in New Zealand and how widespread is this labelling? Zach Fleming went to find out.
Zambesi's been proudly making clothes in New Zealand for 39 years. Founded by husband and wife Neville and Elizabeth Finlay, the brand's website says all Zambesi garments are proudly made in New Zealand at their dedicated Auckland workroom. But there should be a small asterisk there.
Hand beaded or hand sequined items out of India.
That's Elizabeth Finlay. I called her after visiting her Zambesi store in Ponsonby today. Checkpoint's today been checking on Kiwi designers who claim 100% of their designs are New Zealand made. Almost everything in Zambesi was. Almost. One black beaded $755 dress was made in India. Pedantic? Maybe. But I asked Elizabeth Finlay why.
We order the fabric, so the fabric comes in completely beaded. We cut through the beading to make our first samples, which means you've got to hand sew everything back on where you've cut, because obviously beads can't go through a machine. And so then we make the patterns, and then we send the patterns away, and they actually hand bead them to our pattern.
So still designed here, but not made here. She says the manufacturer is child labour free, and she's been assured it meets ethical industry standards.
It's very, very labour intensive, and it would make the garments kind of probably not accessible, I guess. I don't.
You mean
I don't
too
know.
expensive?
It would make them quite expensive, yeah, because it's quite labour intensive, and you need like the right sort of craftspeople to hand bead and hand sequin pieces.
The conversation that we had with Dame Denise yesterday was around this same area. So on your website, it says twice in your About Zambesi thing that all Zambesi garments are proudly made in New Zealand.
In New Zealand, I know. Well, we haven't, I guess to us, they are. Like it's all the main collection is made in New Zealand. It's a pretty big collection.
But it says, I guess it's that word all,
yeah,
isn't it?
I know. I agree. I think that we need to think about how we, word things. We're not trying to, because in the label it clearly states where it's made, but
yeah, it says made.
I guess
made
we're not
in
trying
Kolkata.
to, pull the wool over anybody's eyes or anything like that.
So why make it then? Given Zambesi's foundation is made in New Zealand and 99.9% of it always has been, is it worth it?
Rembrandt have gone offshore, and we've always had our suiting made by Rembrandt down in Wellington, and they've gone to China, and we've just gone, well, we can't now make our suits there because we're New Zealand made. We're now looking for manufacturing in New Zealand that we can replace that with. So, we do care about made in New Zealand. We're immensely proud of it because we're one of the few companies left that does employ, our own staff plus out workers and out factories to produce, Zambesi. But
so this is something that you think about then, when you realise that it's not New Zealand made. So I guess why the beaded thing? If you knew that the suits...
like I said, I fall in love with fabric, and I just think, well, we could never make that here. We could never get it together as beautifully as they will in India from our fabric supplier who will make to template.
Elizabeth says Zambesi hasn't made any beaded items for over a year. The dress we saw today was discounted, half price.
We make here because we care about manufacture in New Zealand. We're trying to grow the industry. We have great long-standing relationships with all our makers here, with our own staff. We have our own machinists. We do all our cutting here in our own workroom. We do all our hand finishing here. We employ 35 people over our stores and our workroom.
So this all begs the question, when is it no longer okay to say we make all our clothes in New Zealand? If it's 99%, do you get a pass? What about if it's everything except for things that would be prohibitively expensive here? Buy NZ Made's acting executive director Anna Haywood says misleading claims about where products are made could be damaging to the fashion industry.
There's no precise formula as to what constitutes as New Zealand made. The Commerce Commission states whether a product is New Zealand made is a question of fact and degree, and the relevant considerations will vary depending on the nature of the product and also what the consumer may understand about it. So for clothing, relevant considerations may include where the clothing has turned from fabric into a garment and, where it has gone through significant manufacturing.
So alongside Zambesi, we called around other Kiwi designers today to check up on their 100% New Zealand made claims.
Everything we make is made locally in New Zealand, so yeah, we know a lot of our makers by name.
That's Madeline Harmon of Harmon Grabisa.
100% made in New Zealand.
And Anjali Stewart of 27 Names. Auckland-based designer Vicky Taylor also told us her flagship brand Taylor is all made in New Zealand. That range has a white Taylor label sewn into the garments. But 3 years ago, she created a second brand for a new, smaller collection of hers that's not made in New Zealand.
We do produce, I think it's about 7 or 8 pieces of knitwear that come out under a different brand called By Taylor. And the By Taylor has a grey sewn label, and that is manufactured offshore.
Miss Taylor says all the By Taylor clothes also have a Made in China label in them. She says the new casual range had to be affordable, but that wasn't possible to do in New Zealand.
That basically gives us the ability, I think the ability to basically sell a t-shirt at $79, $90, while if we were manufacturing here in New Zealand it would be about $240, I think is the cheapest at retail I can get now.
She says it's much harder for New Zealand designers to get clothes made here than when she started 20 years ago. She says there were 40 or 50 textile wholesalers they could buy fabrics from then. Now there are 5 or 6.
It's not just the textile side that's got hard. I mean, we have very few machinists nowadays that are working here in New Zealand. So, for me, it's been a changing time, but New Zealand designers will always survive because we always find a way of making things.
Another Auckland designer, Tanya Carlson, says all her clothes are made in New Zealand, cut by New Zealand pattern makers and sewn by New Zealand machinists.
We make some of our garments here in our workroom. We make with our machinists. Some are made in small workrooms within Auckland, and some are literally made in women's garages and workrooms in houses all over Auckland.
But Tanya says keeping business in New Zealand doesn't come cheap. Take a simple woman's slip, for example.
To have something like that made with, I'm trying to think about the level of components that our slips have, which will probably about 6 to 7 pieces in a pattern, and then elastic and all the trims that go with it. I mean, I would say that we would be probably looking at just having it sewn, maybe up to $40, could be up to $40, and then your fabric cost on top of that. So that may end up being around 20. So you're looking at 60 before you take in any wages of pattern cutters and staff and rent and anything else. So you can see how it's tough. And then people say, that's $150, or $130. That's difficult.
So how do New Zealand designers navigate this? Let's go back to Zambesi, who, remember, make almost all of their clothes in New Zealand.
We are very committed to making in New Zealand, and I think that's a really important thing. I think that you're overshadowing, the good part about what we do. After all this has gone down, I probably won't ever do it ever again, because why? I don't need this in my life, to be honest.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.